Hola!
Hola.
Lightspeed Spanish podcast 22 for absolute beginners. And today we're talking about, would you believe, the nose rule, the broken nose rule, and everything else.
The broken nose rule.
I invented that, by the way.
Muy bien,
Yeah, I
Gordon.
didn't invent the nose rule, but I invented the broken nose rule. Bueno, entonces, Cintia, ¿cómo estás?
Estoy estupendamente. ¿Cómo estás tú?
Estoy fenomenal. Sí,
Fantástico.
sí.
Me alegro.
Gracias. Entonces, Cintia, ¿qué tipo de día has tenido?
He tenido un día tranquilo
Ujú,
con mi hijo en casa
ujú.
y una clase.
Qué bien.
¿Y tú?
Bueno, he tenido una clase en Middlesbrough,
Sí.
una clase de inglés y ha hecho mucho calor hoy.
Sí, mucho
Ujú.
para Inglaterra.
Sí,
Mucho calor.
23, 24 grados
Rozando el límite.
de nuestra capacidad de tolerar el calor.
Vale.
Bueno, okay, so what on earth is the nose rule? The broken nose rule. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Every Spanish word, when you pronounce it, has what's called the punch of the throat, really. How do you say that in Spanish?
Golpe de voz.
Golpe de voz, okay? And all that means is the point of emphasis on the word, okay? Now, every language has that. English, we have emphasis on a word, yeah? For example, I'll give you a word in English. If we think of chemist, okay? Where's the emphasis on that word? Well, it always falls on a vowel, and it's chemist. So it's on the E, yeah?
Usually second last, no?
Hmm.
In English.
In English, it's a bit, we don't really have that many rules. It's a bit dodgy in English. But in Spanish, it's nice and clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you know where the emphasis goes on a word, first of all, that doesn't have an accent. Because even if a word doesn't have an accent, what we mean is the little
Tilde.
tilde, okay?
Tilde.
The little accent. Most of the words don't have them. So how do you know where you put the emphasis? It's absolutely important that you know this, because if you mispronounce the word, people won't understand you. Can you remember the example of the person who went into the service at 10 o'clock in the morning and asked for
Bocadillo.
he wanted a bocadillo, okay, sandwich, and he got, what did he get?
Vodka and ice.
Yeah.
Vodka y hielo.
So the man
At 10 in
heard
the morning.
vodka yellow,
Bocadillo,
yeah,
I don't know how
hmm
you pronounce it.
and another student of mine went in. He wanted sugar, okay, and he said, quiero, because it was at the time he didn't have a very good accent. He said, quiero azúcar, azúcar, and the man was looking at him saying, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying. You're saying azúcar. Anyway, he left without the sugar. Why? Because he was putting the emphasis in the completely wrong place. How do you actually pronounce sugar?
Azúcar.
Can you hear where the emphasis is?
Azúcar.
Azúcar. Yeah, and he was saying azúcar.
Azúcar.
Azúcar. It was even worse. There was a number of things. About four problems with that just in the one word. Okay, so let's start. Nose rule. When a word finishes with an N, an S, or any vowel, and this is why we use nose, because we're talking about an N, okay, or an S, and then the O and the E stand for vowels, okay? If it finishes with any of those, then what happens is the emphasis goes on the penultimate vowel. Now, I learned that word a while ago, but not many people know what penultimate means. It's the second last, okay? So it goes on to the second last vowel. Okay, and it always falls on a vowel. So that's what's called the nose rule. So if you look at a word, let's think of a word that ends with N or S, or a vowel. For example, if we think of the verb hablar, yeah?
Hablan.
Hablan, yeah. So they talk. So where does it go?
Hablan. Hablan.
So can you hear hablan? Why? Because it's Hablan. So because it finishes with an N, it's the nose rule. Therefore, the emphasis must go on the second last vowel, which happens to be the first vowel of the word. So it's hablan, yeah, rather than hablan. Okay. So it's very important that you get this. I've got another example. If we take the same verb, we talk,
Hablamos.
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 There you are. So if you look, that finishes with an S, so it's the nose rule. Yeah. So we know that it goes on the second last vowel, which is hablamos. Okay. So it's not. Now, lots of people, I can't tell you how many students get that wrong. Because of the length of the word, they say hablamos.
No. Hablamos.
Because in the other ones, yes, it does fall on the first H. You say habla, yeah, hablas. But because it's longer and it's got an S on, it's hablamos. Okay, so that's basically the nose rule. When a word finishes with N, S, or a vowel, it will not have an accent on it normally. If it doesn't have an accent, you will always put the emphasis on the second last vowel. Okay? Is that okay?
Fantastic.
Now, let's go to the broken nose rule. Okay? Now, the broken nose rule basically is this. The broken nose means if a word finishes with anything else other than the N, S, or a vowel.
So the rest of the consonants.
The rest of the consonants, yeah? That's what we class as the broken nose rule. And that means if it's broken nose, the emphasis always falls on the last vowel. Okay? Now let me...
Amor.
Amor. Yeah.
Amor.
So that finishes with an R. So that's not the nose rule. It's the broken nose rule. Yeah?
Calor.
So, calor. So what happens is it falls on the last. So can you hear? Rather, it isn't amor. It's amor or calor. And that's why all of the verbs have the emphasis on the last vowel, because they're all broken nose. All of the verbs. Hablar, comer, vivir. Okay?
O pared.
Yeah.
Pared.
Pared finishes with D. So it's a broken nose. Okay? It hasn't got an N or an S or a vowel. Broken nose. So it's on the E. Pared. Also, that think mantel. Mantel. I always get mantel mixed up with delantal, no? I don't know why, but the same word.
Is that where you put it on?
Delantal. Okay? So that's what we've got. Nose rule, okay? N, S, or any vowel, and that's on the second last. Broken nose rule, any other consonant, it goes on the last. And then we have everything else. Now, what do I mean by that? That means all the other words, if they're anything outside of those two rules, there are only two rules. Everything else is where somebody at some point in the history of Spanish has decided that that word is not going to be pronounced as it would normally. And so what they do is they stick a tilde on it, they stick an accent. There are lots and lots of words in Spanish with accents. Now, one of the things that you can do is, for example, with our students, we do lots of dictation.
Yes.
Yeah? And so we get people to write words. Now, so if you see a word and it's got an accent on it, then you know that you're going to have to put the emphasis on that word, on that vowel. So, for example, if we think of, I don't know, station. How do you say station?
Estación.
Okay, estación. Now, it finishes with an N. It's the nose rule. So it actually should be, truly, it should be estación. That's what it should be if it didn't have an accent. But it actually has an accent over the O. And therefore it's
estación.
One thing that's important just in terms of these rules, if you get two vowels together, okay, count them as one. Alright? So, for example, estación, okay, it's got I and it's got O together. So count those as one when we're doing this, where we place them, okay? When somebody's doing a dictation and you're listening to the word, what you've got to do is you've got to listen to where the intonation is to know if it needs an accent or not. So, for example, this word, does it need an accent or not? Sofá. Okay? So let's work it out. Sofá. Doesn't need you know.
I
Okay.
know. Eres yo.
Cynthia knows, but you can't say.
I won't say.
Okay. If you just think about it, it finishes with an A. So it is the nose rule. And therefore it should be the second last vowel, which is the first one. So it should be sofa, but it's not. It's sofa. So you know that the A needs to have an accent because it's not in the usual place. So if you were doing a dictation, you would write S-O-F-A with an accent because it's sofa and not sofa. Yeah?
Muy bien, Gordon.
Now, we've kind of skimmed across that, and that's the best we can do in 10 minutes, but everything that we teach in the video will be in the help sheets and a lot more exercises that you can practice, okay? So, happy studying y nos vamos.
Y nos vemos.
Hasta luego.
Adiós.